Great. Thank you.
We as the European government side believe that killing people illegally is the most fundamentally evil thing universally accepted idea in society and the world. But furthermore, we believe that killing people who are not intended to harm people with your own act should be restricted or should not be accepted because it is completely out of order and immoral for those people to be sacrificed. We believe in that stance. We're very proud to stand on the European government side. There are two things to talk about. Firstly, examining the context of why those people are actually not intended to take part in those mass destruction whatsoever by their own act, but in other words, but actually they are forced to take part in those activities from the very beginning. But moreover, secondly, philosophical reasoning why we should not allow those people to be endangered their lives or to be killed in this specific context. Before moving on to my argument, I would like to set up some models. So we would like to define individual words very precisely. Because, for example, when we say about state-sponsored scientists, we mean, for example, those scientists who were sponsored, for example, example, about technological supplies or whatsoever given by the government to produce things which was ordered by the government. We define the researchers like that in this debate. But moreover, we also say that, for example, like those mass destruction were probably used for deterrence or probably used for their country protection whatsoever. For example, in forms like nuclear missiles or, for example, gas bomb or whatsoever, explosive chemicals, that sort of thing. So, and also we say that being assassinated in this term would be referred as secretly killed or like an illegal killing by, for example, Central Intelligence Agency like FBI's or like intelligence agencies from other countries or neighboring enemy countries. So that is how we define the characters which will be given into this debate. So I'm going to move on to my main arguments. So firstly, as well, we need to, as an opening half, need to make this debate very clear and precise because that is our role. I would like to set a very clear context. Firstly, it's about what exactly is the country which needs this weapons or these tools to actually protect or to actually save the country, right? We need to examine that. Firstly, we think that those countries who is on the verge of mass killing or like have to protect themselves is the one who's neighboring to the country which is fighting for years. For example, in the middle of conflict zone. For example, we expect places like in Kashmir regions in Asia, whatsoever, that kind of area, who is almost all the time in the danger of being attacked and protection and that sort. Moreover, secondly, we believe the scientists, how we characterize the scientists here, is that those people are good enough for the government to develop whatever the government wants, the weapons, right? And also we believe that this specific scientific field, we believe the people who are specialized in those scientific fields is very limited in this occasion. We believe, for example, someone who should be specialized in explosive chemicals, or for example, creating nuclear weapons, the number of people are limited in those countries. We believe in this case, those few developers or researchers or said, because they're limited, they said like with this money you have to research and develop certain weapons, because in other words, if there is many researchers who are capable of creating these things, when those researchers who want to create actively and willingly with their own will, they can do that. What we believe in this situation, very limited number of people are pushed this burden to do from the government. The extent is that those people are actually pushed place to place. Those people are actually pushed and oppressed by the governments themselves. Governments engaged to develop those things.
How do you create analyze this one? That kind of privileged scientists, the documentary capability to make bigger decision to become the asylum seekers if they want. Why you can say they are just pretty innocent?
So we believe it's very likely to say that those people are already put in a situation, it's very hard for them to actually run away from the country. Because we believe the government, top agency of the government, including those researchers, are one of the top priorities to protect within the country, right? So we believe, we assume that those researchers are already put in the places where the government surveillance can be put, right? Those people are the treasure, those people are the asset of the country. We believe in this situation, even if they want to actually be asylum seekers, in reality, it is difficult for them to even actually go out without having, for example, special bodyguards. In this case, it is very hard for those people to actually make a decision to choose to run away from the country. So secondly, I would like to move on to philosophical arguments why it is not accepted is that, so in other words, when it is legitimate for the authorities or like the states or the governments to kill people is the one when it is actually, when it is explicitly disobeying this criminal justice system, when someone is explicitly and obviously betraying someone's right or harming other people by the set rule of the country, those people are allowed to be executed. That is coming from the law, right? But moreover, secondly, we believe this assassination, when it should be allowed, is universal concept that these people should be killed. For example, these people led this really bad war. These people led this really wrong war, for example, in the World War II in Japan or whatsoever. In that kind of circumstance, this accepted concept of evil in this society, accepted image of evil, allows those people to be executed or those people because we believe that in this democratic society, we expect that people's will for being harmed by those people should be reflected to those people's punishment. We believe in this circumstance, universally accepted idea of those people is right to be killed is allowed. So, but in this case, why this principle is not allowed in this researcher's case is thirdly because. As I already mentioned, those people don't have intention from the very beginning to think about their future, to actually kill. Because we assume that those people are actually being tracked all the time, and those people have their family be endangered by the spies of the country, right? In that circumstance, we believe that those people don't even have intention to kill people, but they were forced without their well-being. But moreover, secondly, the harm is not yet occurred, right? They don't really actually occur this mass destruction themselves. It is not their direct cause and it is not their direct responsibility. Therefore, we're very proud to stand on opening up this side. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank the Prime Minister for listening. Let's welcome the leader of the opposition,
Chair, panel, let's make things very clear in this debate. Before going on, I would like to address some inherent government burden that they need to carry on throughout their whole bench. 3 things. First of all, what they have to defend is a blanket ban on all types of assassination on scientists to begin with. We will prove to you why in certain cases, as a warfare tactic, this can be justified in some cases. Secondly, they have to prove to us why those scientists are not morally culpable to begin with. We don't think a one-liner that's saying that they were forced to research on something was enough justification to tell us why they are not morally culpable to begin with, but then we will also tell you why that responsibility, even if that is not true, should not be applied in de-justifying all of the tactics that we have. Thirdly, they have to tell us why the scientific arena or scientific research is so sacred and why that should be protected in a lot of instances, because even under the status quo, we still use assassination as a warfare tactic such as decapitation or whatnot. What we have to see is a justification for a blanket ban on all of these policies. But before going on to our substantive, 5 points of rebuttals. A, they have told us that assassination is illegal and that we are sacrificing scientists to begin with. We don't think that is true to begin with. We think that assassination is considered to be a legitimate warfare tactic to begin with. We think that in order to save many lives, in many cases in warfare, assassination can be justified because we are saving much more lives, which is especially important in modern warfare, which we will explain to you in our constructives. Secondly, they have told us that they are not, they have told us that the number of scientists are limited and they are the assets of that country. That, I would like to flip this logic and then tell you that that is all the more reason for us to assassinate those scientists to begin with, because that exactly tells us why they are the most valuable assets of that country, and by assassinating them, we are getting more competitive edge over that country in modern warfare to begin with. Third of all, they have told us that they don't have responsibility, which we will prove and debunk in our substantives. Fourthly, they told us how they want to have those weapons for deterrence. First, we don't see any justification for having those weapons for mass destruction for deterrence to begin with. But secondly, because we know that those weapons for mass destruction is an existential threat, not only to another nation but also to humanity, we don't see any justification for that nation for having those weapons for mass destruction to begin with. And lastly, they told us about a principal argument that first of all told us that if there is a universal consent that they are culpable, then we can assassinate or kill these people. That actually is conceding to our argument, right? Because then they are saying that the value of life can't be compromised when there is a universal consent, when people are cases when it is absolutely necessary and proven to be effective. Thirdly, they have told us that the harm didn't occur, so we shouldn't assassinate those scientists. However, we think that the reason why those nations research on that to begin with is to actually deploy that weapon of mass destruction to begin with, so we think the harm is quite clear. At least, even if they don't deploy that weapon, as they have told us, it will be used for deterrence, or at least for continuing an oppressive regime, which we think is morally unjustified. Now, going on to our context for this debate, 4 things. A, we think this is a warfare tactic that will only be deployed in a strategic way for 4 reasons. Firstly, because we tell you in many cases diplomacy is the first thing that is considered. We think that this will only be deployed when it is absolutely necessary. Secondly, we say that under liberal democracies, or at least a functional democracy, there will be a media overwatch on whether this assassination can be justified. Thirdly, we tell you that because this is related to citizen security, the nation will not deploy it in many cases, because if they deploy it in many cases which is not necessary, there will be an existential threat on that citizens of that country, which means that there is a negative externality to that country if that is not carefully deployed. Secondly, we tell you that all the other tactics or all the other alternatives that they will suggest is not mutually exclusive on their side. We think that this is an additional tool for combating terrorism or combating war. Thirdly, even if we want to preempt their arguments about possible radicalization, because we live under existential threats of radicalization anyways, we don't think a marginal harm coming from their side is very important in this debate. Fourthly, as they have carefully characterized and rightfully characterized, this happens in many states where terrorism is state-funded, and thus we think that in order to combat terrorism, we think that this is justified. Now, going on to our principal justification. Firstly, on to responsibility. First, two layers of analysis. Firstly, we tell you that these scientists have a clear intention, because both sides know that that research is funded for mass destruction to begin with. We don't think this is the case where a scientist researches for something and then it turns out to be a weapon for mass destruction. We think that scientist who is conducting a research on that clearly knows that this will be used as a weapon for warfare, for mass destruction to begin with, and we think they are morally culpable. Secondly, we tell you that they were not forced, and they instead received something in reciprocity, such as social reputation, such as research funds from the government. Because they received something in return, because they were incentivized to do so to begin with, we think they are morally culpable. Even if that is not true, we believe that under just war theory, this can be justified, because we think the most important thing in war is to create less atrocities as possible. Look at how modern war is carried out to begin with. It is not a war between people. We say that this is more of a war between technologies. Look at biochemical weapons, look at atomic bombs, look at AIs who are carrying out all the atrocities that are happening in the world. We say that because this will lead to less atrocities and a shortening of the war period, we think this can be justified, because at least on our side, we will have lesser people dying out in warfare to begin with. Now let's go on to our practicality. First of all, we think that assassination changes personal incentives of the scientists to begin with, helping them to have integrity as a scientist. We think that under government funding, scientists are very likely to consider them in a vacuum and a veil of complacency to begin with. We think that we have to change their motives in order for them to have responsibility and personal incentive to not engage in those fundings, in those researches to begin with. Secondly, we think that this is more effective, because as AG has clearly characterized, certain individuals are more important because they are the only ones who have expertise on that technology to begin with, right? And thus we believe that because this is more efficient, because this is principally justified, even if they don't have direct responsibility, we think that this is the most important tactic. We are extremely proud of this.
Second leader of opposition for one, comes up from the Democratic Mr. Rivera.
Thank you, Honorable Judge. I think we recognize that the assassination can be justified in the two extremely limited cases. In those circumstances, we think there's no justification to kill these innocent people who just happen to be born in that context and who just happen to become scientists without any intention. They said government is unfunctional, but we don't understand why these innocent people have to be assassinated because of this just state and state relationship. There is no justification to that context. And second of all, their assumption is that it's beneficial for many people, so they can protect many people based on these utilitarian factors. So I want to prove to you why their paranoia is rather counterproductive to save these many people and why this can never justify to assassinate these innocent people. I have two things to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about how it's going to be counterproductive. And second of all, I want to show the alternatives, how we can also have it, even if this counterproductivity doesn't work, what kind of alternatives we have to protect these people. But before that, one independent rebuttals to their side of the house. They said that these scientists anyway have the intention to research and develop this technology or something like that. But my partner has clearly put you, and we didn't revert to that point. These scientists are too limited, especially in those contexts. Honorable judges, we think they misspeak. My partner said, first of all, these people who engage in the specific science field to specialize this mass destruction is limited, and second of all, especially in those contexts, and the state is very confused, the number of scientists itself is limited in the first place. That's why we think almost these people are forced to research and investigate this technology, so that's why they have no intention to develop, to kill these people. And she pointed out these researchers are privileged or something like that. But we are not talking about the time when they enter the science, right? Because after they successfully become scientists, states demand to these people to develop this mass destruction technology or something like that. In those circumstances, when they become scientists, they have no intention. But after they become scientists, they are forced to develop this technology. In those circumstances, they have no intention to kill these people in the first places. Moving on to my first point about the counterproductivity. I have two analyses. First of all, we think if these researchers are innocently assassinated by someone, we think that country whose researchers are killed is simply going to get angry. Why it's harmful? We think that this country starts to have incentive to combat to the opponent in the first place, right? Because assassination is a sign that this indirect means that after assassination, they are going to invade to that country, right? Because this implies that they are going to assault that and intervene that country. That's why they killed these innocent researchers, right? That's why we believe that this is a sign to be going to step into that country. In those circumstances, this country fear these kind of things. That's why anyway these countries have to combat to that circumstances. And second of all, we think that if these researchers are assassinated, rather we think that these researchers are going to be underground and difficult to find in the first place. We think it's very counterproductive. Why is that? Because we are talking about the context. The order, social order is completely confused, and many opponents exist in those contexts. In those circumstances, these researchers to develop this mass destruction is anyway necessary to begin with. In those circumstances, if one researcher is assassinated by some country, but we are going to have an alternative research to develop this country simply because, as I talked to you, this research is anyway necessary to begin with, right? In those circumstances, they are going to secretly research this kind of technology. Why is it harmful? Honorable judges, we think that if this research is publicized and many people know that technology, this opponent country can prevent or prepare how to approach these kind of technologies, right? Because they can calculate what kind of power that mass destruction technology has, and they can counter, and they are going to prevent that attack from that mass destruction in the first place. However, if that mass destruction technology is going to underground, they can calculate where this technology exists, or what kind of technology they have, or something like that. In those circumstances, their innocent casualty, civilian, have to be suddenly killed by this secret, this mass destruction technology. We think it's more counterproductive. Yes.
Advancement of science technology in terms of mass destruction is quite important military information for that country. Why your target country are more than happy to publicize that information to the enemy country? Okay, would you extend the incentive in your case? That country sponsoring the researching are happy to inform the information to the enemy country.
No, sorry, I can't understand. But anyway, I said this is counterproductive because it's going to be underground. So moving on to my alternatives. So I don't understand assassination is so necessary to begin with for two reasons. First of all, these countries can have the third party. For example, in the case of Yugoslavia, United States can intervene and prevent these attacks beforehand, right? So in those circumstances, I don't understand why these researches have to be stopped and by the form of assassination. I can't understand. Second of all, we think, for example, the sanction is feasible, right? Because, for example, if Israel is researching and investigating these technologies, for example, other countries who have the contract with that country can have that sanction, and in those circumstances, that country can't sponsor to that research and investigation, and in those circumstances, they can invest to this technology, and we can decrease the danger of this mass destruction. So we say there is no justification to kill innocent people who just happen to be born in that context, and as long as the assassination can be justified in the two limited cases, and these people should never be sacrificed under the government's unfunctional reasons, we are happy to propose a motion.
Accepted that is the response. Let's welcome the deputy leader of the petition, Mr.
Sharing panels, and each there is three things that I would first speak about the context in which assassination is carried out, secondly about the principal justification, and thirdly about the practical aspect, why assassination is oftentimes the only way to bring the halt to the development of the First about the context. There are three things that I want to clarify. Firstly, about the world that we're living in. We're living in the world of cooperation. We're living in the world of treaties. There are IAEAs to make sure that no country is developing nuclear weapons. There are UNs to guarantee that WMD production is significantly halted. So we believe that those countries that are trying to carry out the development of WMDs are countries like rogue countries, countries that are labeled as terrorist nations to begin with. We think that these countries are mostly things like IS, if you can call that a state, and North Korea or Iraq, that kind of stuff. These are not the normal countries, and that's the first thing that I want to clarify. Secondly, we clearly told you from our leader opposition that we will not be simply going around and killing scientists in a nation just because we think that that country is developing WMD. We already clearly told you that this assassination is carried out only when it is necessary. It is carried out only as a kind of last resort. We already told you that there will be a lot of things to take place. For instance, we told you that there will be diplomatic talks to to bring the end to WMD peacefully. And we told you that we are going to we're going to try to exile the scientists to safer nations if we say that they're enforced, if we say they're so innocent. Thirdly, about the burden, we clearly told you that there are specific instances in which assassination is especially more important than normal time. We told you that assassination of these scientists can be a very effective way of bringing an end to WMD, especially when it is during warfare. We told you that this can be a good warfare tactic, given that we are not trying to say that this is a normal state, but we are trying to say that this is especially when it is warfare, we think that this is a good warfare tactic. Fourthly, what do we mean by WMD? Because it seems like they have a very wrong thoughts about WMD. They bring up the issues like explosive, but we don't think that that's what we mean by WMD. What we mean by WMDs are things like nuclear weapons, things like VS gases, things that can decimate a country, things that can kill like millions of people in a second or in a split second. And when we're given these clear harms or clear dangers that might arise from these WMDs, we think that the harms are really, really significant, so that we should take it very seriously. Secondly, about the principal aspect. So here I want to talk about two things. Firstly, about the saving humanity, and secondly, about the responsibility. So firstly, about the saving humanity. OG says, hey, there hasn't been any harm done by these scientists. They say these scientists are innocent. Firstly, we think that when it is clear and when it is evident that harms are to come in the near future, we think that it is negligent to say that, hey, harms are not done so bad about it. If we had known that baby Hitler was going to kill millions of people, we were happy to assassinate baby Hitler. If we had known that baby Osama bin Laden was to commit terrorism, we were happy to assassinate baby Osama bin Laden. Their logic is simply neglecting the problem. And secondly, about the issue of, and we also want to tell you that given the harms that might arise from the WMD, given the dangers that are closely related to WMD, we think that it is necessary to bring an end to the WMD for the sake of humanity. And secondly, about the responsibility. They continue to characterize these scientists as innocent. They say they were forced to research into their kind of, they were forced into research with these WMDs. They say they are feminists, all those appeal to emotion stuff. Firstly, we say that we are happy to provide the exiles for these scientists. And we think that, and they say bringing an exile to scientists is very difficult. No, we don't think so. If we have the capacity to carry out an assassination for scientists, we think it is relatively easier to bring them to a safer country. And that's what we have seen in the history for the past times. For instance, during the Nazi Germany, the US government exiled Einstein to America. And most recently, the Korea exiled, like North Korea ambassador Taeyong to their own country. So we don't think that exile is a very, very difficult issue as they're trying to characterize. Secondly, and we also told you why, and we also clearly told you why these scientists are directly responsible for the research that is being taking place in these countries. We told you that their incentive is to because they're sponsored, their incentive is to develop these weapons of mass destruction, and we told you how they're being complacent and how they're succumbing to the government instead of trying to go against the government, that kind of stuff. And thirdly, let's just give them their best shot. Let's say these scientists are forced. Let's say they are simply innocent. But even in that case, even if we bite the bullet and say that they're forced, or even if we bite the bullet and say that they're innocent, we don't think that just because they're forced, they can excuse themselves or absolve themselves from all the wrongdoings or all the possible harms that are to come in the future just because of that. We don't think that just because Eichmann was forced by Hitler to commit atrocities, we don't think that Eichmann is forced, and we don't think that Eichmann was innocent. We don't think that any of the Nazi people who are related to the Nazi atrocities are justified or excused from their wrongdoings just because they were forced by Hitler to do such things. We think that their analysis is simply, simply does not stand. And lastly, we think that personal motivation has no place to stand, especially given the special tactics, or especially given this special warfare. We think that what matters in an international relations is acts, not motivation. And second, let's talk about the practical aspects. So, Madam Speaker, note that the ultimate goal of this debate is how to bring an end to WMD. And we don't think that there is any scenario in which government can win over opposition as long as they do not provide any counterfactual or alternative to bring an end to WMD. So provide us an alternative, CG. So firstly, we clearly told you the effective mechanism about how assassination is effective and about how assassination is the only way to bring an end to WMD. Fourfold. Firstly, we told you that even in the short front, at least the process of developing of net and OMD is on a halt because they're head of the chief executives of the process are gone. And secondly, we told you that why the expertise of developing WMDs are only limited to the very limited number of people. We told you that those who have the capacity to develop WMDs are very, very small in quantity, and that's why assassination is so effective. If we eliminate those with expertise, we think that there is very little chance that these countries can develop WMD in the first place. And thirdly, even if we bite the bullet and say, even if we bite the bullet and look at this in long term, we think that it is going to send message. We think that it is going to send scientists that if you do not stop your research, and you might be killed. And when they are kind of threatened by other countries, when they are pressured by other countries, we think that it gets a lot more easier to bring them to an exile because they want to flee their country and they want to save their life. And that's another message that we provide we told you. And they say, hey, if you just kind of openly say that we're going to commit assassination, then these processes will go underground. Madam Speaker, we don't think that process is openly carried out in the status quo. We think the process itself is considered as confidential in the status quo, and we think that it is eradicated underground. So we don't see any marginal sound coming from OG. For all those reasons, we go to the PowerPoint.
Today's opening document or the opening application is really messy. Until now, we cannot understand the researcher have the malicious intention or not. They are post or not. And unfortunately, from the closing document, we try to introduce the more important issue about on any time or anywhere or any condition we cannot justify to kill the scientist and the researcher. And because this time, every kind of the conflict or war are tend to going on the ongoing, and there is the international law which can be guaranteed the fundamental least level of human rights. So to protect that kind of principle, we can never ever justify to kill associate scientists who are not responsible to the killing other or the to be killed other. So that's and entire engagement towards the opposition is included in my constructive speech. So firstly, so before moving on to this issue, I'd like to clarify in our paradigm how we can deal with this kind of problem, how some scientists can be regarded as illegal or immoral. Even if that kind of actor is existing in outside of us, we try to prosecute in an international law, international court or the criminal justice system, because that is when we should follow the fundamental order of the, in this society. So let me move on to our first issue about the principle. Why we cannot never ever justify to kill the scientists who are non-armed people who are not tend to fight directly. So we think, as I said, every kind of war and conflict should be ongoing under the International War and War Act, because to protect the fundamental human rights for the humanity of the people, we should follow such kind of strict order for the international situation. Yes.
Oh, international laws are not legally binding to begin with. Prove to us why this is more effective than assassinating.
Because that, so from I will continue this, the answer of this point of information is included in my constructive speech. So, what is the first year I'd like to explain as an assumption why we should follow the order of the international war law. Because in many cases, in the war or the conflict, the human life can easily tend to be neglected by the soldier or by the military, because it's under that kind of situation it's really confusing, and it's quite difficult to identify how many people are violated or how many people can be suffering. So that's why we already make some absolute rule, like we can cannot do the torture, or we cannot use some vicious weapon like dam bomb or mining or some biogas weapon or something like that. Because as I said, and also the most fundamental analogy is that even any kind of soldier cannot kill the people who don't armed by themselves, because they didn't consent it to be killed by the soldier, or they don't tend to kill other person. So that's why to guarantee such kind of people, we have such kind of laws. And also, according to this logic, the researcher is now also one actor who should be protected by the international law, because they just consented, just making or inventing a new machine or the new weapon, just that. So that's why their responsibility doesn't range to such kind of things to be killed by the other, to be killed opposite nation or the soldiers. So, and also more fundamentally, in some cases they have a malicious intention, or in some cases they just be forced by the government. These kind of things cannot be identified from the objective viewpoint from the opposite nation or from the international court. That's why, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, on that occasion, we should allow them to utilize according to the reason about they have a malicious intention or that they have a responsibility. This kind of logic does never ever stand in our cases. So let's move on to our second issue. In practical scale, even if we can apply their logic about we can save more people, even that occasion we shouldn't take this kind of motion, because as I mentioned, the killing the non-armed people is a fundamental violation of such kind of law, and that means if we associate such kind of people who have non-armed or who have no consent about the killing or to be killing, this kind of situation can provide a justification, evil justification towards the opposite side to use to break some fundamental law as same as the associating nation. Like, for example, the associating nation already breaks the rule, breaks a fundamental rule. That's why even the opposite nation, the victim nation, can conduct the violation of such kind of law. Like, for example, even if we can stop some of the investment or inventing the mass destruction weapon, they already have some traditional mass destruction weapon or some vicious weapon, and by using that kind of things, they have a justification already. Because the opponent's side already breaks the rule. That's why we can also break the rule, and that's why that is legitimate to use the vicious weapon or the mass destruction towards the opposite side as an revenge instead of the killing the scientists. So that's why the practical consequence can be more radicalized or become more harsher. So that's why we think, even if we can consider their logic about to save more, we can kill someone. This kind of logic does never ever stand even in our side of house. So in the end of the day, even if the opening opposition cases can be stand, we cannot do that. And also, as a principle of the fundamental to protect the fundamental human rights, we cannot justify never ever this kind of killing. So for this reason, we are really proud to propose.
Speaker, so today's closing opposition would like to extend this debate from the perspective of internal infringement of human rights. Not only because those countries that we are having
debate in this context is not the liberal democratic country with total governing system, and more likely to have very unproportionate governing system or a dictatorship. So that is why we are going to extend this debate in this perspective. But I'd like to repeat to the previous speaker first. So the speaker was talking about the assassination of these researchers are going to be the trigger of the revenge to attack, or reasons to attack for those countries. However, as we don't see why this extension is that important in this debate, because as we have as the opening her was already talking, these countries have historical bad blood between themselves, and that subtle radicalization because of these assassinations are not does not have that much of an impact, and we don't see why that extension is such a big deal. And they were taking more detailed explanation about how they do not have intent to those researchers do not have intent to commit to those mass distractions. However, as my partner was saying in the POI, those researchers are able to seek assailants outside and be a political representative, and other countries can help as long as they do not contribute to these mass distractions. So that's why they are really they have literal intention towards these mass distractions. Yes.
These researchers are sponsored, which means they have a contract with the country. Why do you think they can speak?
Well, before you make a contract, or even when you came to realization that this contract may be wrong, they are able to seek the assailants outside. And so I'd like to move on to our extension. So I'm going to talk about those infringement of human rights inside those countries towards the citizens by these researchers, and secondly, why it's justifiable. Why is it the international global obligation to intervene to this infringement? So firstly, as I have been talking, these countries with colonial conflicts not likely to be have liberal governing system, and they are and most likely they have big dictatorship, and those dictatorships are likely to oppress those people who are anti-government or who are rebellion to the government. And those weapons are used not only to the international communities or in the opponent countries, but also towards those anti-governmental movements. And this is more likely to happen because those mass distraction outside the country is harder to conduct as harder to conduct than when they have the control over the country and inside, and that is why those countries, for example Syria, have oppressive regime towards this minor groups of people, and those people are just not later, and just those people are born into the country, and that they're more they cannot change the country. Because those dictatorship, it is very hard is like very hard to revenge backwards to the like dictatorship or the government, those with such a fatal weapons, and that is why that is a serious problem in those countries. And secondly, those international communities need to intervene into this infringement of human rights in those countries. Because that is like because that is so because like for example those like genocide happens in one countries in one country like those countries with those countries that want to protect human rights are likely to intervene, like that. Just the like concept of just war. Those invasion towards one country is not justifiable. However, when those countries are doing things that are against human rights, and they're abusing it, we need to save those people regardless of what. And because there's no other means than assassinating the very root cause of those weapons, it is much more justifiable to intervene into those countries, and that's why we're proud to oppose. Thank you.
The tiny extension coming from housing conclusion by saying that if it is not humanity, then assassination should be justifiable because it is a harm. But we say that the widest forms should be the assassination. My partner already talked about if there is a harm and there is an irreversible harm that are likely to use the weapons of mass destruction, we are happy to make them to be an international criminal court. They have to be judged by the international criminal law that applies for the laws, how laws should be. For those reasons, the kind of situation they were justified coming from argumentation coming from opposition. But today's entire opponents are never ever justified to this motion because at the moment, because the opening opposition saying that if it is last resort, assassination is justifiable. Two responses are here. Number one, in the first place, why it has to be assassination in the first place? Because the system that prevents revenge from the country, there is a system that international criminal court in the first place. For those reasons, if the assassination conducted, no thank you, if the assassination conducted, what is my partner and the opening government continuously told you that the harm are going to occur, that is a clear condition coming from closing government, but today's opening government only talked about and justified means, meaning that if some counterproductivity or the third party's harm or the criminal system justify assassination, but the closing government extend that case by saying that we don't until the opening half debate, we cannot understand how the enforcement can be conducted and how the counterproductivity no thank you conducted. That's the reason why we say that regardless of the consent between the scientists or regardless of the counterproductivity, we say under principle that is not justifiable. This is a clear contention coming from my partner. That's why this debate should be taken the closing position. Let's take a look at the detail in this debate by staying at two main points. Number one, to what extent it should be justifiable in the context of the war situation. Number two, even if to some extent the harm exists in that system using the weapons of mass destruction, to what extent that assassination is justifiable. Let me explain one by one. Number one, counterproductivity. But today's opening, the nuance coming from my partner is the justification, meaning that conducting research into weapons of mass destruction can be a reason to conduct assassination. And my partner clearly told you that in the world situation, the consent cannot be confirmed clearly. That's why malicious intention or not malicious intention, we cannot confirm the malicious intention to conduct assassination in the first place. That is a clear reason why to defeat the opening question. No, thank you. That is a clear reason why, no thank you, clear reason why to attack the opponent case in the first place. Because clear logic coming from an opening position is based on that, because third parties harm existence, that is to say, using the harm accompanying with the use of the weapons of mass destruction, if as a last result, that should be justifiable. But now the argumentation never refers to explanation by explaining that why it has to be malicious intention, why it has to be the protection of the country in the first place. Because in the situation of the war formation, the people going to intervene, and people have good reason to intervene in the country in the first place. That's the reason why in the past, 1945 and 1938, the Japan intervened, American country have a good reason to intervene. That's the reason why Japan attacks the American by irrational reason in the first place. For those reasons, they have to explain to you that why simply conducting research into weapons of mass destruction have to be a justification to assassinate regardless of the situation in the first place. They have to explain to you how to guarantee the malicious intention or how to intervene the last result of their country in the first place. But even if this is true, then we say that the country if the country going to use weapons of mass destruction, this is also unjustifiable, we say. That's the clear reason why, if the harm of the conducting, the harm coming from the weapons of mass destruction is also unjustifiable. In that circumstance, they have to prove to you that why the possibility of weapons of preventing the counter revenge coming from the country, a possibility of being illegal. Possibility of conducting illegal things by the opponent country should be the reason, because it is also unjustifiable. Their logic is very tautological in the first place. For those reasons, we must strongly say that the malicious intention or the last result argumentation coming from an opening position cannot be justified in the first place. Secondly, to what extent the assassination should be legal, it should be justifiable. But my partner already talked to you enough mechanism by saying that if the country are going to use weapons of mass destruction, that is also unjustifiable. Means that if the country who uses the mass destruction should be judged in the international criminal court in the past place. That's the reason why, yes, go.
International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice is not a universal idea. Actually, many of the law nations, the country have not signed in the convention. Why you can say that kind of fragile legal convention can be justification?
Because it is universal value. That's the reason why assassination is taking place in the first place. Let me explain let me continue the issues. If the country going to use the assassination, if the country going to take place the weapons of the mass destruction, the country should be just in the international criminal court in the first place. But conducting research into weapons of mass destruction means that they have enough capacity to conduct to have the deterrence power in the first place. They care about the situation of the international relationship in the first place. That's why if some country attacks the country have a power to attack attacking country in the first place. This is also the unjustified thing in the first place. Because the attacking country have a good reason because to prevent the conduct research, to prevent the use of weapons of mass destruction, they are going to assassinate. But after assassination are conducted, the country have a good incentive to attack another country. For those reasons, if the justification conducted in the chain are going to happen because one country attack and that country are going to revenge and that kind of country and wars are going to take place in the first place. We say that unjustified humanity means should not be justified in the further. More importantly, given the situation of the counterproductivity and the situation of the principle, that is to say, given the situation of the principle, we say that should be justifiable in the first place. For those reasons, we are very proud to propose.
unavoidable. Make no mistake in this debate. We opposition side are the bottom of proof to show you even the one single instance which can be justifiable and by assassinating scientific researchers. As long, even though they try to blanketly say university or that kind of thing, as long as we can show you one instance, it is enough reason for you to vote us in the first place. Having so that's why we think, unfortunately, they didn't explain to us why they can ignore our cases, although this cases encompasses their best case scenario. That's why we think our extension, as for infringement of internal citizen, can be a unique reason to win in this debate. Having said that, three issues to sum up this debate. First of all, unsurprisingly, context of this debate, because the context is messy, so I want to tie it up. And secondly, as for maybe a direct split to open to the internationally direct split, maybe found in the opening here. And third of all, I want to directly deal with extension coming from the closing government, such as international convention or such as their version of universal justice. And fourthly, I want to talk about why our extension is quite important in this debate. All of the legislation are included, so let's get it started. First and foremost, context in this debate. Of course, this is very important in this debate. However, first of all, as a consensus in this debate, the country which is conducting the research for the mass and destruction is the rogue nation, and with dictatorship or with the oppressive characteristic. And we assume that it's mainly the Syria, Al-Assad, and so on. And unsurprisingly, other three teams didn't explain to you exact name of the country, so you should assume our example, Al-Assad in Syria, is the most legitimate context in it. And of course, we know Syria, Al-Assad are slaves from Israel, because Israel is a Jewish country and they have Islamophobic tendency. However, at the same time, they also have the tendency to use the mass destruction weapon for internal innocent citizens when they participate anti-governmental movement or when they oppose the Al-Assad. Why is that so? Because of course the internal threat is a direct enemy to the oppression regime or of the regime of the Al-Assad. But in order to fight against that external regime, what he needs is the internal stability. So in order to secure the internal stability, he prioritized using the mass destruction in order to eradicate that kind of anti-government movement in his own nation. And he can also use the rhetoric. This is matter of sovereignty. Under the name of the sovereignty, what they say is that in order to keep social order, he just used. And as a matter of internal sovereignty cannot be easily influenced in the society as a consensus in the international convention. That's why unlike other states' explanation, Al-Assad had a strong incentive to utilize mass destruction weapon to the innocent citizens in their own, in his country. And at that occasion, maybe they said, however, mass destruction is used as a deterrent. However, mass destruction, such as a nuclear weapon, bioweapon, or chemical weapon, is too expensive just for the sake of the deterrence purpose. It costs so many chapters, in terms of human, in terms of time, in terms of politics, and it's a little bit unknown. You are yet unsure whether you can perfectly compose that instance. However, the reason why Al-Assad tried to grasp the weapon of mass destruction is because he strongly wants to use that. That's why we think, as for the intention level, as a main touch point in other regions, we can conclude that the Al-Assad or dictator or the leader of today's the target country has a strong incentive to do so. If they don't want to do that, maybe they can just invest in the normal usual weapon. That's why we think their explanation is perfecting in this debate. Having said that, go to the second issue, maybe open her issue. Open government came up here and tried to say that the scientific researchers are coerced to engage in the weapon of mass destruction. And open opposition did a very good job about how they can how they can escape from that incident. Although that idea is originated from my POI to the Prime Minister, in addition to that, as my partner really talked about, except for the exiling, assisting the exile, actually the scientific researcher have the opportunity to become the asylum seeker. Why is that so? Because in order to put their science research, they have to go foreign country. Because in the target country, they have little knowledge or expertise on the weapon of the mass destruction. So in order to advance technology of the mass destruction, weapon of the mass destruction, they have to go to more advanced, scientifically advanced country. So they often go to academic conference. They often go visit academic institute or weapon corporation. That's why we see in that situation, they can also say, hey, as a kind of in order to so they can also appeal to the dictator, hey, would you give some leisure time with my family, and then they can become the asylum seeker as a family without any threat to that thing. That's why we see as long as they are engaging research, it means that they have an intention to conceive that kind of consequences using a mass destruction. So we also contributed the open health transference. Some of the closing government quite interesting extensions about international convention. As I clearly told you, ICJ or ICC is not a universal value, although they insist on universal value without any explanation. Unfortunately, I definitely think that Syria has not assigned in the ICJ or ICC, because once they assign, they might be prosecuted to the other country. Other side doesn't require that, doesn't desire that kind of situation. That's why, unfortunately, they are regarded. That's why we think ICJ extension coming to their side cannot be enough reason. And over the marginal extension on radicalization is meaningless, as my partner talked about. So lastly and most importantly, with the closing up opposition, it clearly talked about the threat to the innocent citizen inside the dictatorship. And this is quite important because this also consider very reason of coming from the Prime Minister. They also consider in order to eradicate internationally recognized evil, we can also justify assassination. This is the case. That's why we are more than happy to hold this measure. Thank you.